Yo, what's poppin' everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be covering over the top 10 best decks in our Temporal Forces metagame. Last week we switched it up, showed the Twilight Masquearde decks. If you haven't got a chance, check that out. But now we have Los Angeles Regionals coming up alongside a handful of other events in the world. If you're looking to prepare for any of these events, this is pretty much going to be the definitive list of Temporal Forces for the end of the metagame. We've covered plenty of deck lists on this channel so far in the Temporal Forces metagame, so be sure to check it out. But this video is going to include the 10 best decks. So, grab your popcorn, grab yourself a drink, grab yourself a friend, and let's jump into our number 10 pick. But before we get there, put in the comments what your best guesses are on the top 10 best decks. Do you think you're going to get them all right? This week there's been quite a few change-ups, so let's see exactly how that goes. Kicking off our list strong is going to be Ancient Box at number 10. Now, this number 10 spot could have been a handful of other decks, and the other deck that I was really contemplating putting here is either going to be Great Tusk Mill, or was going to be Pidgeot EX Control after Azul and Grant Manley saw some decent success with it at Indianapolis Regionals. I went with Ancient Box because Ancient Box I feel has seen a little bit more success across the board. However, I think there's a handful of decks, maybe 15 decks that are viable in this format, and there's a few that just could not make this list. If there's any decks that you think could have made this list, let me know in the comments below. Love to spark a discussion when it comes to our metagame. That being said, this build is Cyrus Davis's build from their recent League Challenge win. Having single prize retreaters, or single energy retreaters I should say, allows you to have a little bit more mobility when it comes to Koraidon that takes 2 retreat costs. Considering we almost always want to be attacking with Roaring Moon, this deck kind of opens up some opportunities, and of course Great Tusk gives us some mill options, which is going to be helpful when Snorlax and Pidgeot EX Control are seeing some play in our current standard formats. Is this the way to play the deck going forward? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. However, I think that it's an interesting enough list that I want to share it. And of course, if you just want to change the Screamtails and the Great Tusk to 3 Koraidon, slap in Fighting Energy, you can call it a day. Might be interesting, might not be. If you want access to any of these lists for copy and pastable formats, check the pinned comment in our comments below. We'll have that there hopefully in the next day or so, if not by when the video launches. Slotting into number 9 is Arctina. Now, the list that I decided to go with is Josh Frink's top 32 list. It also came 9th place at the regionals in Sao Paulo the previous week. I think that Arctina is one of those decks where it could have been Arctina, it could have been Arc Control, it could have been Arc, Armor Rouge. I went with Arctina because I think it's taken a few more spots and cashed out a few more times than the other decks. If I'm wrong, feel free to try out any of those decks. LimitlessTCG.com has all those lists available, and I gotta grab these lists from somewhere. If they're not always going to be my personal creations, sometimes they gotta go with the best list, and I'm gonna go with Josh Frink's list because he's been on an absolute tear lately. Having double Iron Hands gives you some not Iron Hands, the other one, the Green Grass Goats, Iron Leafs. Iron Leafs 2 times gives you opportunities against decks like Charizard EX and Roaring Moon EX. Beyond that, your typical Arc deck, you got enough Judge, Iono, shenanigans to really try to disrupt your opponent a little bit. Is it going to be better if it's Arc with Eerie? Is it going to be better with its Arc Armor Rouge? We'll have to find out, but right now I think Arctina is just kind of that middle ground. It's not necessarily my favorite deck. It's more of a middle of the road approach, but sometimes the slow and steady kind of consistent deck is going to be in the spot. That's why it's at number 9 this week. Psychic Embracing at number 8 is Gardevoir EX, another Josh Frink special, and I've grabbed his top 4 list from Orlando Regionals. A lot of the Shuffle Squad members making some appearance on this list. Shout out the Shuffle Squad, hashtag TSS win. If you want to get that TSS win, I'm going to shamelessly plug our website. We got some of those ability used markers that show hashtag TSS win or the Shuffle Squad on the back. Pick them up and support the squad. You can find links available in the description. Gardevoir EX is really about loading up those damage counters and energies onto Pokemon like Drifloon and Screamtail, hitting whichever Pokemon you want at various times. There's some control elements with Counter Catcher, Fluttermane, Mimikyu, Klefki, Eerie when it comes to this deck. However, you could play this deck as this pretty much straight beat 'em up deck where we're able to just add up energies and attack. and that's typically how this deck is going to be playing out. Some matchups might require a little bit more skill sets. Gardevoir is kind of getting, and it's either really good because Lost Box seems like it's a little bit on the rise, or it might start to get a little bit bad as other new decks are emerging into the metagame. One thing that I've noticed about Gardevoir, can struggle with consistency sometimes, so stay kind of clear of, like, think about how you can make this deck more consistent is probably the best way that I put it. Because I have seen this deck brick more often than not. Maybe it's a pilot thing, maybe it's not, we'll have to see. But Gardevoir is chilling at number 8. You just can't deny the success of this deck. Slapping all the other decks out of its way to make it to number 7 is Turbo Iron Hands EX. Now, we got to give a shout out to Yuho for seeing success at LAIC, EUIC, and most recently Stockholm Regionals. And one thing in common is they are all lightning type decks. 100% just a fan of their love of Iron Hands EX, and they continuously bring it. I shamelessly have their list right here in front of us, and it's one of those things where if you're able to get Iron Hands EX off and just slap through to your opponent, you might be in a good spot. As Charizard's kind of taking a little bit of a dip this week, maybe it's a good time to literally catch your opponent up with these hands and rip into them with an Iron Hands EX deck. I don't know what else you'll run into. Maybe it's going to be tough to run in some other matchups, like it might be a tough control matchup, might be some tough other matchups. We'll have to find out as we kind of go through the metagame. But right now, this deck is on its way up at number 7, and we'll see if it's going to hold its spot or if it's just a single player really holding it down when it comes to this deck. Number 6 and flying high is Lugia V-Star. Now, Lugia V-Star is the deck, and this exact 60 that I brought to both Orlando and Indianapolis Regionals, making day 2 at both top 32 and top 128. Really not too shabby when it comes down to it, because Lugia is incredibly well positioned to a lot of decks in the metagame, including Charizard, Control, and Arceus decks. Now, I just saw that we're trying to avoid that number 7 deck, the Turbo Iron Hands, so stay far away from me. But reasonably, Lugia has all the power of a single prize card deck, loading up a bunch of energies, and hitting hard with Chinchino. Got a few other attackers like Snorlax or Lugia itself, but the deck list is relatively simple, and it's one of the most effective decks we currently have in our metagame. I mean, sure, there are going to be quite a few counters like chien-pao EX and Turbo Iron Hands, but if you're able to avoid those, the deck has generally good matchup spreads against the rest of the top decks in the format, including Dialga V-Star that just won Indianapolis Regionals. Will Lugia continue to fly high, or will it fly under the radar? We'll have to find out at Los Angeles Regionals. Taking that double turn all the way at number 5 is Origin Form Dialga V-Star with Metang. Now, this deck is able to kind of run through your opponent and really take that extra turn and then hit hard, really clearing the board state of any major threats. Now, Dialga might be a little bit one of those run hot decks, but when you're playing this deck to its exceptional top levels, and you're able to kind of learn the ordering of your deck to some degree when it comes to Metang, you have some opportunities after you use Metal Maker to understand if you're going to get boss's orders with Pokegear. So this deck can be high skill in the later stages of the game, but sometimes it's going to come down to ripping energies off Metal Maker early, praying to Arceus, and slapping hard for whatever attack you got going on when it comes to the Origin Form Dialga V-Star. Whether we're trying to hit for a big number with its first attack, or we're trying to take an extra turn with Star Chronos, this deck really has a lot of opportunities, and it's been tearing up cups, at least in my area. So give it a try if you're looking for something a little bit new. However, I think a lot of decks are going to start trying to counter this after Andrew Hedrick won Indianapolis Regionals with this deck just a week ago. Blocking the way at number 4 is going to be Azul GG's Stockholm winning Snorlax Control deck. Now, after playing Pidgeot Control over to Indianapolis Regionals, Azul flew across the pond to Stockholm Regionals and won the whole thing with a Snorlax Control deck. Snorlax is one of the only few decks that has decent matchups against both chien-pao and Charizard, so I think Control might be the way to go if you're trying to have a decent shot at the metagame. Now, as players play Control, players also counter Control, so it's something to consider going forward. However, I do think we are going to see a decent bit of Control going forward, with players looking up to Azul GG being one of the most well-known players in the game. So when it comes down to it, I think Snorlax is going to continue to have a decent matchup spread in the metagame. It's just adding another deck into our rock, paper, scissors metagame. And if it's something that you haven't necessarily prepared for, I recommend playing a handful of games, whether with it's your friends, online, or your coach when it comes to something like Snorlax going forward. Yes, Control is back. Control might become even better after Twilight Masquearade, but for right now in our Temporal Forces metagame, it is alive and well. A surprising fit into our top 3 decks is going to be Lonebox. Lonebox has really been rising the past couple events, and the list that we're looking over here is Jackson Ford's list from the Indianapolis Regionals. Now, Hermione played an interesting list to Stockholm Regionals where he placed second. However, I wasn't necessarily sure how I felt about playing both Rotom V and Lumineon V in a Lonebox deck and cutting out some other cards. A few other notable players, such as Brent Tonneson, have also played this deck recently, so maybe Lonebox is the sauce going forward, and I would expect a handful of top players to follow suit and play this deck. Lonebox doesn't necessarily beat everything, but it also doesn't necessarily lose to anything either. You have a lot of options and a lot of matchups, and a lot of it's going to come down to whether Comfey is going to allow you to have skillful choices, or if you're going to be forced into some tough decisions. I think Lonebox has kind of been neglected in this format, so I think it might have its opportunity to just be back on top in general. And of course, the non Tina build of this deck like this is a little bit faster, so that's one of the reasons why we're not going to see Tina on our top 10 decks list. Probably, like I said, with one of those other few decks, probably be in the 11th, 12th range right now. Certainly not a bad choice, but not necessarily the choice that every single player is going to be making. Breathing some hot fire at number 2 is Charizard EX. And yes, I said number 2, this deck is no longer the top deck in format. It was dethroned by something, so put your best guesses to what that deck might be in the comments below. Maybe it's obvious to some of y'all, maybe it's not. Put your best guesses. The list that we got here is Rowan Stavenow's top 256 list from Indianapolis Regionals. Except we did cut the Prime Catcher for a max belt to follow in suit with some other players like TSS's very own Ian Robb. Now, I think that this build is incredibly powerful because you have access to double Charmeleon to get around things like your opponent playing Technical Machine De-Evolution. We have the Pidgeot and the Barrel Surge, Lumineon and Rotom. We got Jirachi and Manaphy for the Lonebox matchups. We kind of have a little bit of everything. And one thing that I've noticed, and even from playing this to a top 4 League Cup finish in the past week, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of playing cards such as Eerie and Technical Machine De-Evolution. They can just kind of lead to some dead cards in your hand, whereas I'd much rather have some more supporter cards in general. Zard is arguably been the strongest deck our entire season so far, so if you haven't necessarily tried this deck out now, might be worthwhile. Still going to be a strong deck heading forward as we experience our Twilight Masquearade format. And that leaves us to what our best guess is at our number 1 deck. Put those guesses in the comments below. While you're in those comments below, be sure to check out the pinned comment for the copy and pastables of all these decks. And let's get it. Let's see what we have at number 1. And here you have it. Number 1, chien-pao EX. Now, chien-pao EX, we got to give it up to the list that John Ang, Grant Shen, Regan Retzloff have been playing at these events, and they're just keep on playing the same list. So why would we change this up? Why would we not play this list? And that's a valid question. I think, like, we should just continue on to play this list because it's been proven for multiple tournaments that this is just the be-all end-all list that everyone is really seeing success with. chien-pao, it's easy to kind of explode a bunch of energies on the board, loading them up with Excalibur. But really where this deck takes that next level skill is going to be sequencing properly to make sure you're playing cards such as Radiant Greninja, Nest Ball, Pokestop. All these cards you could play in different orders. Which order should you be playing? It's really where this deck's going to cause you to think. So chien-pao up at that number 1 spot, taking it all the way. Might just win the regionals in Chile, might just win the regionals in Los Angeles. We'll have to see how it turns out. Did you have chien-pao on top of your list? Let us know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. All the lists are available, like I said, probably a couple times in this video, in the pinned comments, so you can copy and paste them right into PTCG Live or any Limitless Tabletop Simulator or similar program that you like. Let me close things out. And that's what we got going on for our video today. Chien-pao is on top, and we'll see if it's going to bring that icy hot fire breath to Los Angeles Regionals and other events happening in this format. If you haven't already, pick up some Twilight Masquearde cards from our sponsors at Kayfabe. They will be vending Los Angeles Regionals, and you can place an order on their website to pre-pick up some of their cards. Pick up some codes from PTCGL store. They're likely going to have Twilight Masquearde codes out very soon, if not by the time when you watch this video. And check out the Ultimate Guard website. I've been rocking these just plain red Sidewinders. They're great to, I don't know, throw your decks around. I love them. They're fantastic. We also have some big news in store. Maybe a new sponsor joining the board. We'll have to figure out, see how that's going. So if you have any guesses on that, let us know. Otherwise, hit me up for some coaching. I have plenty of availability for both Temporal Forces format, Twilight Masquearde format. So if you're preparing for Los Angeles, North American Internationals, or anything in between, hit me up. I'm also running plenty of courses available on MetaFi, so check out my page in the description. Whether you're looking for something that's a little bit cheaper for those group sessions, or if you're looking for some individual coaching to really help you get to that next level, I got you. I got some other content coming out this channel this week, so stay tuned for that, alongside some other Shuffle Squad members. We got Dre, Jer, and we got LDF streaming this week, so stay tuned for all of that on the channel. Much love, peace out, have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.